Hey everybody, my name is David. I'm the founder of Tapestry. We're a social protocol in Solana. I'm truly excited to be the moderator for this panel. We just finished our raise, so I have some burning questions I have for these guys. I will pass it down for intros.
Nice. Hello everybody, I'm Einar. I'm one of the partners at CoinFund. We're a early stage crypto venture fund that's been around since 2015. Has made over 125 investments in those 9 years. Yeah, excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Wyatt. I work for Castle Island Ventures. We're a blockchain-focused firm, mostly investing in institutional adoption and broad use cases in crypto. I've been around since 2018, mostly seed and Series A focused.
And my name is Sam Lehman. I'm a principal at Symbolic Capital, which is a Web3-focused pre-seed through Series A fund. And in addition to that, I also co-founded the MIT Harvard Accelerator, which is an accelerator program for founders from either of the two universities.
Awesome. I will say CoinFund did pass on us, but no hard feelings.
Our loss.
First question, what common misconceptions do founders have about fundraising that you wish they understood? It's for the group.
I'm happy to start. I think, first of all, I think actually most Web3 entrepreneurs that I meet are actually very well educated about fundraising compared to the wider populations of founders. I think it's very front and center of a lot of people's mind. For context, I was in venturing Web2 for many years before I kind of fully focused on Web3. I think for me, the big difference between raising in Web3 versus Web2 is that you have a lot more sources of capital that are available to you, depending on what sort of partners you're looking for. So, typically in Web2 in venture, you only have one source of capital usually, and that's Web2 venture capitalists. In Web3, you have many different sources, from hedge funds to traditional VCs to family offices to merchant banks to everything in between. And they all operate in very different ways, and they have very different approaches to partnership. And so I think really understanding who you're talking to, what kind of investor they are, and making sure that they align with your interests is the area I see, I think, most confusion often in Web3 fundraising.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It relates to an earlier panel where Dan was talking about Echo as being like one new way that people are doing fundraising. One thing I might add, and I think you see this with very seasoned founders, is they have an attitude of, not to say they're always raising, but they're always open to having conversations, and the thought of opening a process, and at the very least, they'll talk to you to take a temperature check, as opposed to, I think sometimes you'll get founders where they'll tell you in a pre-seed that this is the month that we're going to do our seed and then our Series A and our token sale 4. And I like that personal dialogue that happens where you can have those conversations and they're sort of ready to bring on a good partner and be flexible when it comes to those processes.
Both great points. I think I might add on to what Einar was saying a little bit. Capital comes with expectations, and different investors have different expectations. So know what you're getting into when you're taking capital from specific funds. What do I mean? I think a real issue I've encountered multiple times is one set of investors expects a company to achieve their returns through a token, and another sees it as an equity-focused business. Those are two very different paths to exit. And as a founder, you should know, where you are going to try to accrue value towards, and make sure your investors are aligned with that. If you raise with a SAFE and a token warrant, that's more a sort of a industry norm, but not a way to sort of cover both bases and tell the same or two different stories to all your investors. Get alignment on where you're building towards with your cap table. That's a pretty sort of tactical piece of advice I'd try to give to folks.
Yeah, I'd like to double click because I got contradicting advice. How would you advise a founder to structure their fundraise? Is it something that founders should do in like a 3-week process? Should they meet with the investor maybe months before? Some people told me to don't even talk to an investor until you're ready to fundraise. I guess I just would like to hear your feedback.
Yeah, again, so I think there's multiple ways to run. Both can work, right? I've seen both of them work, and it really depends on your ability to. So if you set a set timeline, it really depends on your ability to create hype and kind of interest in that timeline, right? Because if you're saying, hey, please send me term sheets by by the end of the month, and the end of the month comes around and you don't have any term sheets, you are not in a good spot, right? And you've already kind of whipped up some interest, and then suddenly you're just like without any options, right? So then you kind of got to go back. And one thing that's very difficult in venture in general is you spend a lot of time getting venture investors excited and kind of seeing the vision and getting them to a point of yes. And then once you get them not excited for whatever reason, venture investors, or at least maybe I shouldn't be speaking about everybody here, but you immediately start rationalizing away why you weren't that interested anyway, because you're not going to do the deal. And then so to get people re-excited again is very difficult, right? So really both things can work. I think it depends a little bit on your stage. Cool. If you're a Series A, Series B stage, like we do Series A, Series B investments at CoinFund, we like to track founders over time because that gives us more confidence in their ability to deliver, to ship, to attract talent, to kind of do what they say they're going to be doing, and that gives us more confidence to make the decision quicker, I would say, from my perspective.
Yeah, I like the point on stage. I also love, David, that so much this is from personal experience. I think it bodes well. I would second the part you mentioned on stage. Another thing I would say is I like when you hear a story, especially if it's a founder that you're tracking, like Einar was saying, and then you talk to them again and it's a similar story where it's like, okay, here are the 3 things that matter to us: number of wallets, number of impressions, and let's say like number of integrations we built out. And then they come back and sort of give you updates, and it's just a slightly better story because it gives you a sense of that they know where they want to go. Where it can be a little off-putting when you speak to someone, then the second time it's sort of a completely different story and they're going after a different audience, and the third time it's also a different story. I recognize things change when you're doing a business, but I find it's very impressive when you have these people who have sort of a guiding light in terms of like, this is how we assess ourselves and this is how we know that we're progressing in the right direction.
I don't have too much to add, and I also want to make sure we can sort of popcorn around and stuff, so let's keep rolling.
Yeah. What stands out to you about exceptional teams or projects? Any through lines or any feedback on what makes a great founder to you guys?
I mean, at least from where I sit as an investor, I'm maybe slightly earlier stage than these folks, and so I'm extremely founder focused. And I don't care what your pedigree is or what credentials you have, but the one thing I'm indexing on is, are you the best person in your industry, in this space, to build what you say you want to build? How is your experience and your expertise relevant to what you're working on? That's really what I care about, and the best founders have that like incredible founder market fit, that alignment, and they're able to tell that story as they're talking to me and they're pitching. I want you to lead, again, if it's been a pre-seed, early seed type round, lead with your experience and why you are the only person in the world that can be building this. Those are the pitches and the founders that stick with me the most, is where they lead with that as opposed to taking me through the product and the market potential and the TAM, and then they're like, oh, by the way, this is our team slide. We did this and this and this, and here's a bunch of logos. That's not what I want. Flip that around, lead with some more of the personal side is what appeals to me.
Yeah, I think in that vein, they lean into their strengths a lot. So they'll know that like maybe their development or technical first founder set, and they know exactly what product they want to build out and the functionality they want to build to bring to a specific user set or to a specific niche. And they'll build a team around sort of what their strengths are to fill things in. I think sometimes people will try and be sort of a master of none type founder where they try and cover all the domains because they think that they have to, as opposed to having like leaning into whatever a standout exceptional quality is.
Awesome. You all are Web3 founders or Web3 investors. What metrics stand out to you all, and do any actually not stand out? I mean, I've heard that wallet addresses now can be botted very easily. So
that's a terrible example.
Yeah, I'm curious about what metrics you guys look for Web3 projects.
Well, for me, it really depends on the business. What drives the underlying value in the company or the protocol? And that is really kind of key for me, right? And like, so there's no like universal answers. For some protocols, TVL is really important. Sure. For other protocols, TVL is like super efficient. So like, it's not really a good measure of things going well, right? And I think What is actually tougher and more focused on talking about the botted thing is like actually how much of this is real. That's like a huge question that we always have. And how much of whatever metric or whatever behavior is happening is repeatable and sustainable, right? What is the actual retention? And we see this time and time again around airdrop farming, for example, right? That's like, for me personally, completely uninteresting. It's a great way to get attention and like see the numbers go up and to the right. But like, hey, this moment you take your snapshot and activity just dies off, it's like, wow, okay, that was very expensive way of getting attention. And so I pay a lot more focus to the quality of the metrics, I guess, than like the actual, or rather than saying like, hey, this is the most important metric.
I have a question for you, Einar, on with CoinFund having such a wide range of stages that they invest at. Can you maybe talk a bit about like, are you metrics focused at all at the pre-seed, the seed? How does that change as you get towards Series A and B?
Yeah, great question. So, just for context, we have a seed fund at CoinFund that will do seed investments, and then we have a venture fund that will do Series A and Series B. The focus shifts from more founder and team focused in the seed, because there's less to go with, to what we call signs of product market fit, right? Now, signs of product market fit at the Series A stage can manifest itself in many different ways. Most obvious one is obviously number of users, revenue, or volume, or whatever kind of drives activity. But it can also be earlier things like customer feedback, right? Like one of the investments that I did personally in Solana in the infrastructure space, one of the signs of product market fit there was that the founder told me that like, hey, I'm the last thing any project turns off. It's like if I wanted to today, I could go in there in this room and turn off the business for 100 customers. And like when they're not paying their bills to anybody else because they're going out of business, I'm the last one they pay to. So that's like another sign. That's not necessarily like a attraction metric. That could kind of give you some of that insight.
I was just gonna say, in that vein, I feel like what people in the industry say about a team or about a group of founders can be very informative. An example I think of vividly for this is Bridge.xyz. I remember when they were just starting out, I talked to like 20 startups in the next 6-8 months. They're like, we use Bridge. The integration process was great. We can't use anyone else. And they've obviously done very well and been in the news recently. So I think that can be a great like smooth brain metric of sorts.
That's awesome. A question that I was asked to ask: why do VCs ghost?
There's a couple different reasons. The two most common are, one, they just forgot and they got too busy and they're not on top of their Telegram. That happens a little bit. A more common one is VCs, a lot of them, and it's not great behavior, but they want the optionality. So they don't want to say no to you because they're going to wait for another fund to come in and see if they can get a signal from one of those shiny tier 1 funds. And then because they haven't technically said no, when they hear that, oh, this company's getting super hot, they just got a term sheet from so-and-so, then they come back to you and be, hey, so you want to set up a second call? Would love to hear the progress. And for them, in avoiding the no, they feel like they're leaving the door open. To be clear, it is a horrible experience for founders, and I think it is like explicitly bad behavior for VCs to do that. But from my perspective, that's the most common reason for why it happens.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that, other than to say don't take it personal, is what I would say, right? Like if they're ghosting you, it's not you that's something wrong with. It's just, hey, just means they didn't call.
Totally. For our potential early stage founders in the crowd, what's the best way to reach out to you all if they have no connection to you, warm connection?
I think there are many different ways of getting in front of the VCs that you wanna get in front of. One good example is to be at conferences, meeting people in person. Like at the end of the day, a VC's job is to meet founders and do investments. So I think all of the people that I know are always very happy to chat and kind of engage if you're interested. Well-crafted cold emails can work, right? If you have to, but you definitely risk getting lost in a bunch of emails, right? And you need to hit the right person at the right time. So I would, if I had to really give an advice, it would be like, hey, try to shorten your VC list and work harder on getting in front of the VCs that you think are high probability, rather than blasting cold emails to a huge top of funnel, would be my advice.
Yeah, I was gonna say a personalized Twitter outreach of sorts. Like it's beneficial and it sort of shows that someone's thoughtful. I would say this for founders. I would say it's for talent. Like in the same way, if they reach out and they comment on something they know about us as a firm, or that they could have learned online, or something they read that they think pertains to us distinctly, and even better if it pertains to their business. But if it's sort of a clear copy paste type thread or message, then that's not very differentiated.
Yeah, the cold email I get the most is where they try to make like a half effort to personalize. Is like, saw you invested in this company. Like, company has no relation to what they're doing. You should talk to us. If you want to go the cold email route, which I personally don't recommend as much, because I don't remember the last time I responded to one, frankly. If you are going to do that, personalize it. But I think what is much better is to find a way to get a warm intro. It means so much more, and with how much inbound most funds do get, a big number of them, I've just gone, I'm only going to really listen to the warm intros. If there's some other funds that are more open to cold emails, and you'll see the Twitter threads of how to craft the perfect one and the one that wowed the investor and ended up in a great Series A investment, like, give it a shot. But me personally, I really only pay attention to warm intros, and that's just because of volume.
Makes sense. Any warnings for red flags in either a founder or a reach out that you guys might have?
I would say excess emojis or typos, which it sounds like a joke. That happens all the time. Like, if I'm being frank, and I don't like it. It's probably a level beyond like the copy paste, is if it's just emojis all over the place. So that would honestly be number one for me in a reach out.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's really around maybe professionalism and avoiding bitterness. Like, one thing that comes across really poorly is to talk down on your competitors, for example, and really shit on other people. There's usually no need for that. You can definitely describe them in a way and just kind of explain how you differentiate yourself without kind of having to pour dirt on people. And the same goes for turndowns, actually. So, it's a very small ecosystem and community, especially if you're planning on sticking around for many years. And so making sure that the interactions, even if it's a no, or even, if something, even if somebody ghosts you, to just make sure to, like, hey, keep the tone light and kind of move on, rather than like harping on it or becoming very offended, is a very important piece to me, because, this happens all the time, that we do deals in companies where we passed on the seed, we realized we were idiots, and then we came crawling back for the A and was able to invest in that because we kept a good relationship over time.
And I think definitely agree on sort of getting passed on with grace. It doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help you. It doesn't build good relationships in the community. To express any real frustration or negativity there. The other piece I would say is, be careful with stretching the truth, like, aka don't lie. If you get a little too over your skis with talking about who's in your pipeline or who your customers are, or even saying, oh, like, we have a mutual connection to so-and-so, they recommended that I talk to you. Good VCs are going to fact check that stuff. They're going to do their diligence, and they're going to say, hey, what do you think about this person? Do you know this person? What's your connection? Are you a paying customer? And if it turns out that you were stretching the truth or flat out lying, that's going to be a pretty quick pass. So basically assume that VCs you want to take money from are going to do their homework on you, and be truthful in all your interactions.
Yeah, so when passing on a team, any tips for that team to stay in touch with you, so maybe later down the line you guys would revisit that?
Yeah, I have a couple of tips. I think And so number one would be that when a VC passes, they've made up their mind. So typically, often, as a founder especially, I think, because you're so highly convicted of what you're doing, you really want to try to convince that person and spend a lot of time sending emails back and forth that like, hey, you're wrong, like this is why you're wrong. And I'm just telling you it's going to be a waste of your time because that person has already made up their mind. So that would be my number one tip. The second tip would be I would definitely keep investor updates going every month or so to keep people posted on your progress, because I do read that stuff. And it doesn't need to be, as detailed as like for your actual investors on the cap table. I love it when they are, and often they are. And so, but that means that like I do check all the emails that I get for regular investor updates to make sure that like, hey, this person is really doing great. Like the metrics are working, this like seeing a lot of signal here. So I'm going to reach out proactively because I can see an inflection point in this company.
Yeah, I also like being put on investor updates on deals that I passed on, and I too read those and look for progress. And if something gets to a point that's interesting, then I'll reach back out, and it's pretty easy to reach back out in that case. Related to what Einar was saying, one thing I forgot to mention maybe in the last question was, don't take not getting feedback or not getting very detailed feedback that personally if a VC passes on you. A very common thing is that a VC will pass on you because they don't think you're the right founder to bet on, or there's not that right founder market fit. I don't know too many VCs who are going to tell a founder that. So they'll just say some totally, general nothing reason for passing, or just say it was too early or something. And I wouldn't try to dig for too much more beyond that, because I find out oftentimes it's something that doesn't help either party to share. And so I would just sort of keep pushing on, and if you do get some great granular feedback from a VC, that's great, but I wouldn't expect it from everybody you talk to.
Yeah, I'd like to flip it a little bit. What advice would you give to a founder to look for in the VC that they're reaching out to? Like, yeah, because there's a lot of capital out there.
I think there are ways to figure this out looking at someone's portfolio and their public messaging, but you probably want to go after the ones that seem like a stage fit. And part of that is, I don't think this is necessarily talked about enough. In crypto, once you get to a certain stage, there are only so many funds that can do your like Series B round if you get that far. When we're talking about like the Moderator Eclipse round who were on stage earlier, like there are probably 4 funds who can lead something like that, and then like 10 to 15 that can meaningfully participate. So if you're a pre-seed or seed founder, I think there are a few reasons why you wouldn't want to have one of those massive funds be doing that round, because you almost cross them off the list at a later stage, and it's probably not the most efficient conversation to have at that point anyway. So I would do research on who you really respect, who does early stage deals that are maybe adjacent to yours, and make that like your target list of sorts, and then you can have a longer full list.
Yeah, I have very strong opinions on this. I've been, both in Web 2 and Web 3, I've seen a lot now. But so for me, there's 2 things to think about. It's like, what can the VC do for you in the downside when bad stuff happens? And what can a VC do for you in the good side to maximize upside, right? And I think like, it's a really long, especially at seed stage, it's a really long marriage, like seriously, like this is like 10-year plus journey probably. And you're going to see these guys a lot. So you really want to make sure that these are people you actually want to see for 10 years and that you can call on when stuff gets really tough, because stuff will get tough. Like that's like the one constant in all startups, is that no startups are up and to the right. And so like these need to be the people that you call on when things are not going well, when you need to fire people, when you're running out of money, when you lost your biggest customers. In crypto, when you're getting hacked, I sit on the board of companies that have gotten hacked for millions and millions of dollars. It's not a fun experience, right? And so that's sort of like the downside. And then you got to gauge, okay, how can these guys help me grow? Which doors can they open? What advice can they help me with? Like kind of which pitfalls can they help me avoid going, right? So a good way of gauging that, look at their portfolio companies. Go and talk to the founders that these guys have worked with, right? Like almost every founder is more than happy to reference to other founders what the different VCs are like. So if you start reaching out, like once you get further down in the process, but you really want to look for. And again, I'm a traditional VC in that sense, that like I think of myself as a company builder and as a partner in building the company. So my advice to you would be like, hey, find somebody who will partner with you for a 10-year journey and kind of just share that journey with you. It's really important to me.
One thing I would add, going back to one of the first questions, was when you're evaluating different VCs to try to reach out to and get connected to, make sure there's going to be alignment on the types of companies that they invest in and the type of company that you are going to be. And let me give like a specific example. So the portfolio company, they essentially present like a SaaS business. They're not going to have a token. There's no reason for them to have a token at any point. They're going to generate revenue through subscriptions. And the founder sent me a list of funds he was looking for introductions to for a seed round. And I looked and was like, 3/4 of these funds only do token-based investing. You're not the right fit for them. Let me sort of highlight some of the ones that are actually going to be excited about the type of business you want to build. And let's go get you talking to those funds, because it's going to be a waste of your time having pitches with these funds that are only interested in companies launching tokens. That's not you. It's not going to be, again, a good use of your time. So make sure there's that alignment there.
Awesome. Last question before I open the questions to the audience. Is there any stigma to founders pivoting kind of pre-investment in investors' minds, or how do you guys think about pivoting?
You mean in during while they're raising, or before?
Before, maybe during. Sometimes you can't help it.
During can be tricky, because that could be a signal that essentially you're having a hard time raising with one idea. And it took you to get to the raise to realize it was a bad idea, and now you're somewhat cynically pivoting. But before, for me at least, not at all. Most companies pivot. Most successful companies pivot once. So long as when I ask why you pivoted, you have a coherent story to tell and you really understood the reasons and why you're still a great fit to build what you pivoted into, I don't care at all.
Yeah, I agree. I would pause a fundraise if you were pivoting in the middle of what was an existing fundraise. And aside that, I fully agree.
Same answer. We have a minute left. Any questions from the crowd?
Have you ever passed on a project that later on, somewhere down the line, that you came back and then took that project back on? And if so, what made you take that project?
I'm doing this right now. The question was, have you ever passed on a company and then at a later round come back in to invest in that company? It was a consumer business, and I wanted to see a little bit more traction, and so I wasn't able to fully commit to like the pure founder-based investment. I wanted to give them some time to have some actual traction to show, to have a beta out, and to see the feedback they were getting from customers. And all the feedback was really phenomenal, and the traction was what I was looking for. And so I tried to keep that relationship warm, and when they were opening up their next round, start talking to them again.
Are there any VCs out there that are funding open source that you know of, that are maybe allocating part of their funds for funding projects?
Open source is a huge trend, both in Web 2 and Web 3. So I would say a lot, yes. I would say more VCs than not doing it, if you're looking at the B2B side.
Does it necessarily need to be potentially profitable? Or
There needs to be large outcomes. If that's through profitability or through something else, that is kind of up to the project, I guess. But all VCs at the end of the day need to return money to their investors. So we need to make money on our investments. So there are other charitable ways of getting money for things that aren't going to have large outcomes at the end of the road. But like if you're going to have pure VC money invested, there needs to be big outcomes on the other side, for sure.
Awesome. Well, we are at time. Thank you all. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.